Hey everyone, welcome. This is Baron. So this is a video about Winged Scarabs. Specifically, if you are doing the infinite Winged Scarab strategy, should you sell the Scarabs exactly as you find them, or should you try and convert the lower value ones to higher value ones? Is the harvest conversion here a bait or profit? Now, this video isn't technically about the viability of buying Winged Scarabs just straight off the market and converting them for some Hideout warrior type profit, but there may be some applicability there, and so I'm going to touch on that at the end of the video. If we determine the strategy to be profitable, the two questions you would have to ask yourself would be, number one, is the profit per conversion, per hit that you get, is that worth the time? And then how much time would you have to spend buying the supplies needed, trading for the supplies needed? So the main focus of this video is Scarabs we farm ourselves with the infinite Sextant, infinite harvest Winged Scarab farming strategy. What should we do with those? The only way to get this answer is going to be with some hard data. So let's dive in. To start with, let's talk Scarab prices. Now, personally, I've got experience selling these individually, in small stacks, large stacks, and in some cases, some comically large stacks of, 100 or more Winged Scarabs of a certain type. And I can tell you from that experience that the ability to sell at different price points, it does fluctuate a bit depending on how many you can offer, the size of the bulk that you can give, but honestly not by as much as you might expect. Thanks to that infinite Sextant strategy that this is all based on, there's a lot of people out there who are able to offer dozens of Scarabs at a time. So while bulk selling still does command a premium when you can offer a stack of at least a divine orb worth of Winged Scarabs, the difference between one divine's worth and 10 divines worth is not as large a difference, not as stark a difference as you might expect. Especially if you're familiar with flipping other coveted currencies, where selling one is very different than selling 10, like tempering orbs, fracturing orbs, essences of horror, stuff like that. So, again, some data. PoE Ninja tells us that Winged Scarabs, if we just look at the chaos cost that PoE Ninja is telling us, Winged Scarabs range in value from 27 chaos for a Sulfite Scarab up to 43 chaos for divination Scarabs. On the whole, this is, I'd call it a decent approximation of the value, but it is thrown off somewhat by PoE Ninja is being influenced by all trades, not just the bulk trades that we're talking about. So even a trade of one or two Scarabs at a time is going to go into that PoE Ninja calculation, and we're frankly not concerned with that. We're talking about cases of being able to trade a stack or more at a time, and so we need to look deeper. We need to get a specific look at what is going to happen if we try to sell at those volumes. When we look at it that way, at the time of recording of this video, Breach Scarabs, which we start with, go for 8 to 1 Divine Orb, and you do have some hopeful people out there trying to sell it for 15 to 2 Divine Orbs, or 7.5, so they're trying to sell it for a half a Divine extra profit. But honestly, looking at the number that are available for the 8 to 1 Divine Orb ratio, I think that the people offering at 15 to 2 are unlikely to sell at that rate. They're not going to get 7.5 for their Breach Scarabs. There's just too many people offering at the 8 to 1 ratio. And here's the thing. That's Breach, but the exact same thing that I just said applies for Cartography, Shaper, Elder, Sulfite, Expedition, Legion, Metamorph, and Abyss. A ton of them, the majority of the Scarabs. Why? Why are they so similar? Well, the reason so many Scarabs have the same bulk price, despite PoE Ninja telling us that they vary slightly, it's actually quite simple. It's us. The market is set by people doing exactly what is being described in this video. If the average benefit of using the Scarab, by the way, as an aside here, if the benefit of using the Scarab in its intended strategy is less than the average benefit of flipping the Scarab, then unfortunately, it's pointless to use that Scarab for its intended strategy. The market is going to be dominated by people like us, or people like who are doing what we're talking about in this video. So, for example, to give you an example, if the average blight encounter from a winged scarab, if that didn't pay out enough to cover the same profit as flipping the scarab to a better one, and this is demonstrated, by the way, this is demonstrated by data provided by my new buddy, Casual Dan PoE. Shout out to his channel. I'm going to link it. Encourage you to check it out. He got the data on this and found that it did not pay off to use a winged scarab if your actual intent was to do blight farming. And the reason for that is because this process of flipping scarabs tends to establish a kind of equilibrium, a kind of lower limit to how far the price of even a useless scarab can fall. And so if you can't get enough profit through the actual normal use of that scarab to overcome the profit from flipping it, it's just not going to be worth it. So, as Casual Dan pointed out, it's better if you're farming blight to go with the gilded scarabs. But for our purposes, we're talking winged scarabs. If anything like elder, shaper, sulfite scarabs, if we were to ever start to see those fall too fast in value, people offer them for less and less to try and offload them even quicker. Well, it would be very easy for people like us, me, and people watching this video to identify that and start to buy those up at the lower cost to improve our profit margins. Now, spoiler alert, right now, as I'm looking at the trade sites, I'm actually seeing that Torment Scarabs in particular, winged, there's a couple of them going at a steal of 9-to-1 divine, which is much better than the 8-to-1 that the majority of other low-tier Scarabs are going for. With that said, this does just seem to be these couple 9-to-1s, just a couple folks who are trying to liquidate very quickly. So if I had to guess, I'm betting that if you came back in an hour, or even less, you would find that it has already stabilized itself and that they're back at the 8-to-1 value. So I don't think that I'm ruining the market too much by pointing that out. I just wanted, as a general principle, a general rule, to talk about how if things start to dip like that, it's easy for people who are doing flipping to kind of boost it back up. Now, there's an interesting one that I didn't mention in there, but I'm not entirely sure if it belongs to the upper tier. It's kind of a wait and see, and that's the Bestiary Winged Scarab. Sort of in an interesting position right now. There's not a ton available on the market, so that makes it hard to draw conclusions. There are a limited number available at 8-to-1, and normally if there's only a couple available at 8-to-1 and then it skips to the 15-to-2 ratio, that would make me think that the 8-to-1 people are trying to lowball, and that if you wait long enough, you might be able to sell at 15-to-2. That's normally. But with so few on the market, I have a hard time justifying that position. There's very few at 8-to-1, there's very few at 15-to-2, and then there's also a few available for 7-to-1, but that may just be people being hopeful, like before. So unlike the others that I mentioned, it's kind of hard to draw conclusions about Bestiary without just wait it out. Put it at a higher price point, wait it out, see if you get lucky. It really is hard to say for sure. For myself, for what I would recommend, me personally, I have a hard time justifying including the Bestiary Scarab in the upper echelon without some further evidence. If we get some more data on this, I'm happy to bump them up, include them in the upper echelon. That would be great. I mean, hey, I would be the first person to be thrilled by that. It would be amazing for our profit margins. As you're going to see, including more Scarabs in the upper echelon, the more you include, you get exponentially more profit because your ratio of success goes way up. So I would love it if Bestiary wound up there. I just don't see it. I think it's entirely possible that the limited number available at certain price points is simply because not a ton of people are even trying to sell the Bestiary Scarabs. So that's enough of that. Let's move on from that and talk about the actually interesting ones, the ones that stand noticeably above the rest. Let's start with Reliquary, the drop more unique items Scarab. While there's a couple of these that are listed at 8-to-1, these get snapped up very quickly. I am convinced, based on my own experience selling these, that the ones listed at 8 to 1 are really lowballing. They may even be price fixing, but more likely they're simply lowballing to get snapped up quickly. Most of the Reliquary Scarabs are gonna go at the 15 to 2 ratio. This is particularly true if you've got more than the minimum stack size. If you're talking about you have 30, 40, 50, 60 Reliquary Scarabs, you'll be able to sell at 15 to 2. There are some people out there who are hopeful, like we talked about before, and in this case, they're hopeful about selling it at a 7 to 1 ratio. But again, same kind of principle applies here. The sheer volume available at the 15 to 2 ratio makes me think it's virtually impossible to sell one of these at a 7 to 1 ratio. I think they're just being too hopeful. I am willing to confidently place the value of Reliquary Scarabs at a 15 to 2 value. I will place Harbinger Scarabs even more firmly in the 15 to 2 category. There's really not much ambiguity there in either direction. There's no people trying to lowball them at the moment, and there's even more in the 15 to 2 category before you get to the people trying to get lucky and sell at 7 to 1. I wouldn't bank on 7 to 1, even if you get 70 plus of these. Try it if you're willing to wait a long time and see if you get lucky. Somebody trying to buy up hundreds of these at once, but I wouldn't bank on it. And for the purposes of our calculation today, I'm going to call it 15 to 2. Ambush comes up next. As you can tell, I'm going in increasing order of value, and it fluctuates. From what I've seen, it is one of the more volatile ones. It at least goes at a 15 to 2 ratio. I don't think I've ever had to sell it for any less than that. And frequently, my most common experience is selling it at 7 to 1. If your stock is low, it's going to take longer since it can go in waves. It's not going to happen until somebody buys out the low stock of the 15 to 2 market, and then somebody wants to make a quick buy, so then they'll pay the 7 to 1 ratio. But I've definitely had it happen, and for this one, I've even had it go as far as, what was it, like 22 to 7 or something like that, like something that was just shy, or just better than, rather, the 7 to 1 ratio. So in any case, I would say if you've got dozens of these Scarabs, as is the intent with this strategy, go for a 7 to 1 ratio on the ambush. Not going to be a problem, at least at current market prices. But now we come to the jackpot hit, right? The one, I mean, you know where we're going with this, I assume, if you're not living under a rock. This is the one everyone's using because everyone wants their apothecary card. Divination Scarabs. These are routinely going at a ratio of 6 to 1 divine. So obviously, if you hit this on a reroll, it's a big profit. But that brings us to what turns out to be the central question of this whole enterprise, this whole video. If you roll one of those middle-of-the-road options we just talked about, the ambush, the harbinger, should you stop there? Or should you keep going until you hit the jackpot? This is a legitimate question. I didn't know the answer to this going in, and to get it, we need math. We need math, and here comes the math. Let's start with the cost of re-rolling. At the Harvest Bench, we're going to be charged 30 purple juice to re-roll a single Scarab, and it just goes up proportionally. No discount, but no added cost either. So we can roll up to 10 at a time in a stack at the same rate, 10 for 300 a reroll, which is what I recommend doing. And so let's talk purple juice costs. It has for days now been going pretty consistently at a 10,100 juice to 1 divine ratio. Do a little math there. We find that each individual reroll, each attempt at a reroll of a stack of Scarabs, 10 Scarabs, will cost 0.29 divines or 7.9 chaos. Let's be honest, that's a pretty big investment cost up front. Every single attempt, which is not guaranteed to be a success, almost 8 chaos. So we definitely need to do the math and figure out whether the benefits stack up. There are 16 types of Scarabs that it is possible to be, and re-rolling your stack of Scarabs at the Harvest Bench cannot change it into the same type that it currently is. So that means if you are starting with a non-divination Scarab and you would like it to become a divination Scarab, that is a 1 in 15 chance. You will get a divination Scarab once out of, on average, every 15 rolls. 6.7% if you care. So that's if you're shooting for just one. If you're shooting for one of the big four, it's a 1 in 15 chance. Now, if you don't care which of the big four it is, if you just say, hey, look, any one of the big four will do, well, that's a 4 in 15 chance. So your chances go way up, but your income gets diluted somewhat, and we need to calculate how much the income would be diluted by. Again, you're rolling just for divination scarabs, it's going to be expensive. You are going to spend an average of 118 chaos to hit at a rate of average 15 rolls to hit it, and 7.9 chaos per roll, 118 to hit. Also, worth noting, the variance is going to be high. Shooting for a 1 in 15 chance, there are going to be times that you go 30 in a row, 40 in a row, and don't hit it. You're going to get unlucky. That's going to happen. You're also going to have one where you hit it in 2. All I mean to say is the variance is going to be high, so in order to achieve that average spending of 118 chaos to hit, it's going to take a while before you start regressing to the mean, so to speak. You may need hundreds of Scarab rerolls to start settling in on that average, so you might get unlucky. You might go deep into a hole before you even get that rate. But okay, let's say that you do. Let's say that you do hundreds of Scarabs and you spend 118 chaos to hit a stack of 10 divination Scarabs. What's the difference between a stack of 10 generic winged scarabs and 10 divination winged scarabs? Well, at the ratio that we talked about of 1 to 8, 8 to 1 divine for a generic scarab, that's worth around 33.1 chaos in bulk. And then we look at the divination scarab, a 6 to 1 ratio, that's worth 44.2 chaos in bulk. So when you hit the jackpot, you rolled that stack of 10 divination, you've made, do the calculation here, 44.2 minus 33.1. Take that and multiply it by 10, we get 110 chaos. Well, we just said a minute ago, the average cost to hit the jackpot is 118. You only make 110 when you hit it, so we got an easy answer here. As for rolling only for divination scarabs, don't do it. Don't. Red flag. Stop sign. Don't be greedy. Do not roll for divination scarabs alone. I cannot recommend it. Sure, you might get lucky, but if you're doing this long term, I cannot recommend it. But what about the middle of the road options? Should we check those too? It's not going to be much profit per scarab because, hey, we're bringing it down, right? It's not just going to be the nice jackpot of the divination scarab. We've got the 1 in 7 and the 2 in 15 options as well. But does it outweigh the investment when you hit? If so, by how much? We've got to do a weighted average to find this out. You've got to average in, of the 4 that you might hit, 2 of them are going to be for a 2 in 15, or a 15 to 2 ratio. 15 scarabs to every 2 divines. 1 of them is going to be for a 7 to 1 ratio. And, of course, the big jackpot is going to be for a 6 to 1 ratio. Having done all that, assuming that the weightings between those 4 are equal, which is true as far as we know, you're just as likely to hit one scarab as the other, the average value of hitting one of the big 4 is 382 chaos. On average, given 2 of them are 15 to 2, 1 7 to 1, 1 6 to 1, 382 on average compared to the 331 chaos cost of the stack of 10 generics that it used to be worth. So, for those paying attention at home, when you hit, that is a 50 chaos gross income. You've gone from 331 to 382. It's about 50 chaos. It's already not a lot, but okay, what about our odds of hitting? Well, they went way up. They were 1 in 15, now they're 4 in 15. That's a better than 1 in 4 chance. It averages out to be once out of every 3.75 times you roll, you'll get a hit. That's just shy of 30 chaos to get a hit. So we profit around 20 chaos. Every time you hit one of the big 4, profit 20 chaos. It takes about 4 rolls, just shy of that. Now that number doesn't sound large, but when you're talking about a large farming session, you've built up dozens of winged scarabs from your farming. I mean, the added profit that you're getting easily adds up to several more divines, and it's pure profit. We're talking about after you subtract the investment of the original scarab and the juice. So I can unequivocally stand behind the process at current market rates of rolling your scarabs. If you find them yourself for the infinite sextant strategy, I recommend re-rolling them to be one of the big 4. as a bonus, that strategy, the infinite harvest, infinite sextant strategy, it happens to produce a ton of extra purple juice from the cases where, your secondary crop doesn't wither, so you get a bonus second one, or just cases when the purple crop has more rare monsters and the yellow crop has no rare monsters. So you'll end up with some purple juice. You won't even have to trade for a ton of it to make this flipping worth. Fully endorse it, reroll them, stop on ambush, reliquary, harbinger, or divination, the big four. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm going to talk a little bit towards those of you who might be interested in doing a little hideout warrioring. Can I recommend this strategy for sitting in your hideout and flipping? Just go buy up a bunch of generic Winged Scarabs off the market, purple harvest juice, roll it yourself. And as with many, many things in the game of Path of Exile, this is going to depend a bit on your capacity to resist tedium and boredom. 20 chaos per hit as a profit, not a lot of profit until you remember it only takes 4 clicks to hit on average. An experienced player is going to be able to recognize the colors of those scarabs at a glance. You're not going to take any time at all for that, and you are going to end up averaging faster than 1 click per second. That's what I do. And I'm a fairly cautious person, but the color of the scarab stands out pretty well, so you're going to average, be conservative, call it a click per second. I happen to think you'll go faster. If, in the hypothetical universe where you could just reroll and do nothing else, you have access to infinite scarabs, you have access to infinite harvest juice, that's a profit over a divine per minute. And that sounds pretty appealing, even if it's damn boring. I sit there and I click, 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 and then I sell. Boring, but damn, a divine per minute? Yeah, I'd go for that. 60 divine an hour is more than even the most egregious clickbait YouTube video would dare to promise. But that's not the profit we're talking about, is it? Right? You know where I'm going with this. Let's not forget, the market for Winged Scarabs is not infinite, and the Path of Exile trade system is, for lack of a better word, it's imperfect. So to get the literally 9,000, by the way, calculated that out, to go an hour and get that 1 divine per minute, that's 9,000 Winged Scarabs that you need to convert and then sell, by the way. Do you think you could do that in just a few minutes? Because for me, I have no confidence that I can go on the trade website and get 9,000 Winged Scarabs of a generic type. If you look on trade right now, you're going to see that to get scarabs at the prices we talked about earlier in this video, the upper bound of scarabs, you're going to average maybe, if you can get 70 scarabs in a trade and you want to get 9,000 scarabs, that's 128 trades in Path of Exile's trade system. 128. So, maybe, if you had a dedicated trader, a buddy who is working with you, one of you does only trading, one of you does only rolling, maybe a 2-man party could make this work for a while. But even then, buying scarabs in those quantities is going to massively and quickly affect the market. A single person or team doing this could, within the hour, spike the prices of lower tier scarabs to just make this whole strategy worthless. You wouldn't be able to buy them at a price where you could profit from it. So that is a toss-up. Can you afford the tedium? Can you afford to kind of wait between your buying and roll it like that? Do some today, some tomorrow, some the next day so you don't kill the market? Can you wait long to sell, 9,000 divination winged and reliquary scarabs? Maybe. If you're the type of person who's rolling sextants and selling them on Discord, maybe this appeals to you. I'm not sure I'm going to go for it myself, but I could see where a reasonable person might do the calculation that they can get away with it and that people are running enough maps that they can sell 9,000 scarabs. That I will leave to you. But in conclusion for the video, I will say without any reservation, without any hesitation, that rolling your own scarabs that you get from a winged scarab farming strategy is absolutely the right thing to do. No hesitation. As an independent hideout warrior farming strategy, like I said, toss-up. It's going to depend on the tedium, how efficient you think you can be in trade, and how tanked you think the market might get if you do. I will leave that call up to you. And for me, I will likely stick to the Winged Scarab farming strategy myself for now. That's it for me, though, and that's it for this video. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take it easy, everybody.